Breaking. Buckingham Palace just confirmed the one rumor they tried to silence for over a decade. After years of whispers, leaked documents, and public outrage, the royal family has finally admitted the truth, and it's worse than anyone expected. Prince Andrew's royal status has been officially erased, and the fallout is massive. What does this mean for King Charles, for William and Kate, and for the monarchy itself? Stay with us. This changes everything. The revelation that shook the palace. On 17 October 2025, at precisely 9 a.m., the royal website released a stark, carefully worded statement. Prince Andrew, once celebrated as the Duke of York, would be stripped of all remaining royal titles and military honors. The announcement came directly from Buckingham Palace, marking a formal break between the disgraced royal and the institution that once protected him. Within minutes, media outlets like AP News, The Guardian, and Sky News splashed the headline across global platforms. The language was abrupt and final. No soft justifications, no room for interpretation. The palace had drawn a hard line. The core of the announcement confirmed what many had suspected for years. The palace could no longer ignore the weight of sexual abuse allegations tied to Virginia Giuffre, or the deeper scandal of Andrew's ties to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Though Andrew had denied the claims, the palace's move sent a clear message. Denial was no longer enough. The decision acknowledged, indirectly, that the royal household had reached its breaking point. The controversy had moved from private shame to public disgrace. The palace, long silent, was finally speaking. Inside the royal family, the fallout was immediate. King Charles III, who had taken the throne just 2 years earlier in September 2022, was said to have been personally involved in the decision. Sources close to the court described the mood inside Clarence House and Windsor Castle as tense and exhausted. Senior courtiers and advisors had reportedly warned the king that the scandal was threatening the very stability of the monarchy. For months, pressure had been mounting from members of parliament, media, and the public. Charles had tried to preserve a sense of order, but by October, silence had become impossible. The importance of this moment can't be overstated. In over 100 years, no senior royal had ever been stripped of such titles in this manner. The move set a precedent that even those born into privilege could be held accountable, at least in the court of public perception. The monarchy, often accused of protecting its own, was forced to concede. For watchers of the royal institution, this marked a dramatic shift, not just in policy, but in power. For Andrew, it was the final step in a long, humiliating fall. But behind that single-page announcement lay a much deeper story, one that had been quietly brewing for over a decade. What the palace confirmed in public had been privately feared, discussed, and even covered up for years. The truth wasn't just about what was admitted, but why it had taken so long to get there. The hidden story behind the facade. The allegations that triggered this crisis had been circulating since at least 2011, when Virginia Giuffre first accused Prince Andrew of abusing her when she was 17 years old. She claimed to have been trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and forced to have sexual contact with Andrew on multiple occasions, in London, New York, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Andrew denied the accusations, famously calling one incident impossible due to being at a Pizza Express in Woking. That denial, during his disastrous 2019 BBC Newsnight interview, only fueled the fire. The royal family's response? Silence. While the world saw limited public engagement from Andrew after 2020, insiders knew the matter was far from settled. Emails and flight logs from the Epstein estate showed clear links between Andrew and convicted criminals. Aides and advisors within the palace were said to have grown increasingly uneasy, particularly after Giuffre's civil lawsuit led to a confidential financial settlement in early 2022. Though the agreement included no admission of guilt, it raised eyebrows. Why pay an estimated £12 million to end a case if there was truly nothing to hide? For years, whispers inside the palace pointed to growing tension. Leaked memos suggested staff had warned senior royals that the issue could not be buried forever. By 2023, internal briefings reportedly showed concern that the media or political establishment might force a reckoning. But each time the scandal threatened to flare up, royal communications offered deflections or silence. The pressure continued to build. And yet, no one moved. Not until new evidence began to surface. A 2025 investigative report included previously unreleased emails that pointed to ongoing contact between Andrew and Epstein after his 2008 conviction. That was the breaking point. Public trust, already shaken, turned to outrage. Legal experts began calling for formal action. Political leaders, including prominent Labour MPs, demanded accountability. The royal family could no longer maintain the illusion of distance. The palace's statement in October 2025 wasn't made out of principle. It was made out of necessity. Years of evasion had finally collapsed under the weight of evidence, pressure, and time. Once the truth came out, the next step was structural. This wasn't just a symbolic move. Andrew's fall had to be made visible. In the weeks that followed, changes came fast and loud. His name vanished, his page was edited, his titles erased. It was no longer about shame. It was about erasure. Title, dignities, and royal roles revoked. The list of what Prince Andrew lost in October 2025 was long and historic. He surrendered the title Duke of York, which he'd held since 1986, alongside his remaining military honors. This included roles such as Colonel of the Grenadier Guards and honorary Air Commodore titles. He was also stripped of ceremonial positions in several regiments. For a royal born into status, these roles had defined his public identity for nearly 4 decades. Their removal marked a complete dismantling of his presence within the monarchy. Though he remained a prince by birth, that distinction now existed only on paper. Legally, the monarchy had no immediate way to revoke his birthright, but practically, Andrew was no longer permitted to represent the crown in any way. He was barred from state events, military ceremonies, and royal family appearances. Royal sources confirmed that he would not appear on the balcony of Buckingham Palace during major public celebrations like Trooping the Colour. His name, once found prominently on royal correspondence and websites, had been quietly pushed aside. The changes to royal communications were swift. Within 24 hours of the announcement, Andrew's official profile was updated on the royal.uk website. Mentions of the Duke of York title were removed, replaced with the more subdued Prince Andrew. His biography was edited to reflect that he no longer held public roles or military appointments. Across royal social media accounts, from the royal family Instagram to the @Royal Family Twitter handle, there were no acknowledgements, tributes, or images. It was a digital wiping away, a quiet but powerful signal. The impact rippled through the wider royal household. Senior aides reportedly used the occasion to warn other non-working royals titles, patronages, and honors were no longer untouchable. Within the House of Windsor, the message was clear. The institution was now willing to sacrifice even its own blood if the pressure was high enough. For the monarchy, this was about more than one man. It was about survival. And to survive, they had to show the world they could clean their own house, no matter how high the names. Scandals, leases, and cover-ups. After the public removal of titles on 17 October 2025, attention quickly turned to another scandal brewing behind palace walls: money. Specifically, Prince Andrew's long-standing lease at Royal Lodge, a sprawling 30-room mansion on the Windsor estate, came under intense scrutiny. Though Andrew had signed a 75-year lease in 2003 and reportedly paid £1 million up front, reports from The Sun revealed he had not paid any meaningful rent in over a decade. The deal had always been controversial, but now it looked suspicious, like yet another royal privilege quietly protected. Digging deeper, journalists found that public funds had indirectly supported the upkeep of the property. Taxpayer money had gone towards security and maintenance, while Andrew enjoyed the estate rent-free. Internal documents leaked to the press showed that the Crown Estate had been warned in 2020 about optics, especially after Andrew stepped down from public duties. But little had changed. Investigations from outlets like The Times and BBC Panorama revealed that even after being sidelined, Andrew retained staff, access, and the backing of palace resources. The financial scandal merged with the ongoing allegations, forming a broader narrative. A man accused of abuse still living in royal luxury, insulated from consequences. Emails leaked from within the royal household in early 2025 hinted that officials tried to shield Andrew's finances from public view. A draft memo between senior aides at Clarence House warned of explosive backlash if the lease details went public. That backlash came swiftly, especially as cost-of-living protests swept across the UK that same month. People were outraged to see public figures protected while families struggled to heat their homes. The pressure forced King Charles III to act again. By November 2025, palace officials confirmed that funding for Royal Lodge security would be cut, and Andrew would need to renegotiate his lease. Media sources described his reaction as furious, but powerless. The monarchy had finally crossed a line it had long avoided, confronting privilege. What started as a sex abuse scandal was now exposing royal money trails, hidden contracts, and quiet cover-ups. And the British public was no longer willing to look away. As the scandal grew, the world took notice. The monarchy was no longer just a British story. It became global news. Royal watchers, political leaders, and average citizens demanded answers. The crisis had moved beyond family shame. Now it was a matter of institutional trust, media pressure, and public outrage. Global media, public outrage, and institutional response. By the third week of October 2025, the world's headlines were locked on one subject: the unprecedented fall of Prince Andrew. The Guardian, Reuters, and AP News all led with phrases like "royal reckoning" and "the Queen's favorite son cast out." Across the Atlantic, CNN, The New York Times, and Le Monde echoed the same narrative, that the British monarchy was finally being forced to confront one of its darkest scandals in modern history. The media didn't hold back. They dug in, demanded transparency, and kept the pressure high. In the UK, the public response was immediate. Polls conducted by YouGov between the 18th and 22nd of October showed that 68% of Britons supported further action against Andrew, including the removal of remaining privileges and potential eviction from Royal Lodge. Over 150,000 signatures were gathered on a public petition within 5 days. calling for a full audit of royal finances. Protesters gathered outside Clarence House in Westminster, holding signs that read, "Not above the law," and "Justice for victims." The mood had turned. The public was no longer passive. They wanted accountability. Politicians responded quickly. Multiple MPs from Labour and Liberal Democrats called for legislation to allow Parliament to revoke peerage titles, something currently within the monarch's discretion. The Home Affairs Committee launched a probe into security costs for non-working royals, with £5.6 million in taxpayer expenses from 2019 to 2024 flagged as unjustified. Even some conservative figures, usually loyal to the Crown, expressed concern about optics and accountability. One MP called it a constitutional embarrassment in slow motion. In response, the monarchy's PR machine moved fast, but carefully. A second palace statement, released on 23 October, acknowledged public concern and pledged a transparent review of royal spending. However, access to Andrew remained restricted. There were no interviews, no photos, no staged appearances. The damage control strategy was clear: isolate the scandal, cut communication, and ride out the storm. But for the public, this wasn't enough. The trust gap had widened, and it wasn't going to close easily. But this wasn't just a one-time crisis. Behind the headlines, a deeper shift had begun. If titles could be revoked and leases scrutinized, what else could change? The monarchy, once untouchable, was now facing real questions about reform, and the conversation was only just beginning. Precedent for royal reform. The events of October 2025 shattered long-standing assumptions about the British monarchy. For centuries, royal titles were seen as permanent, immune to scandal or scrutiny. But now, that illusion was broken. With Prince Andrew losing his titles and privileges, a precedent had been set. Royal watchers and constitutional experts agreed. The rules had changed. If Andrew could fall, so could others. This was no longer about one man. It was about how the monarchy governed itself in the 21st century. Discussions inside palace corridors turned to title reform. Aides close to Prince William reportedly supported measures to reduce the number of working royals and reassess title distribution. Reports from Cosmopolitan UK highlighted private talks where William expressed interest in a leaner, modernized royal structure, one where patronages were earned, not inherited. That idea, once radical, now gained traction. Senior staff reviewed protocols for how titles were granted and, more importantly, how they could be revoked. By the end of 2025, whispers of a formal framework had already begun. Transparency became the buzzword. Demands grew for the monarchy to publish annual financial disclosures, similar to charitable trusts. Activists and reform groups pushed for independent audits of royal spending. Even senior royals like Princess Anne reportedly supported these calls behind closed doors, seeing them as a necessary evolution. The palace's communications team began drafting new guidelines, while the Privy Council office explored mechanisms for accountability in future appointments. The old world of private privilege was being chipped away, quietly but steadily. What made these changes historic was not just the scope, but the source. Reform wasn't coming from outside pressure alone. It was now coming from inside the institution. The monarchy, shaken by the fallout of Andrew's scandal, had no choice but to modernize or risk being left behind. The events of October and November 2025 weren't just a public shaming. They were a wake-up call. And in the eyes of many, it was long overdue. Impact on the younger royals and succession. As the scandal surrounding Prince Andrew unfolded, attention shifted to the younger royals, especially those who would inherit the public duties he had abandoned. The fall of the Duke of York in October 2025 sent a warning through the entire House of Windsor. For princes, princesses, and heirs growing up in the royal system, this was no longer the protected path it once seemed. Titles could be taken, reputations could collapse, and no birthright could guarantee public support. Prince William, now 43, was already steering the royal family in a different direction. After Andrew's removal, insiders said William was deeply affected by how quickly public trust could be lost. He reportedly ordered a quiet review of how roles would be assigned to his children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, in the years ahead. William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had spent years carefully shaping a modern image, grounded, duty-driven, and scandal-free. Andrew's disgrace only sharpened their sense of purpose and caution. For Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, Andrew's daughters, the fallout was deeply personal. Both had remained loyal to their father, publicly and privately. But after October 2025, they began to step back from the spotlight. A planned charity event featuring Beatrice was quietly cancelled. Eugenie, previously active with environmental causes, made no public appearances for over 6 weeks. Friends close to the family described them as devastated and isolated. Though not stripped of their royal styles, they now walked a much narrower path, watched more closely than ever before. The long-term effect was clear. Roles were shrinking. The monarchy, once sprawling with dozens of titled figures, was tightening. Young royals would have to work harder to earn public respect. Appearances would be fewer. Patronages would be more selective. And everything they did, or failed to do, would be judged against the backdrop of Andrew's scandal. What had once been a birthright was now a high-wire act of accountability. But as the royal family adjusted its image and structure, the legal world stirred beneath them. What had started as a PR crisis was now reopening old cases, questioning constitutional protections, and drawing Parliament into a centuries-old debate. The consequences weren't just social or symbolic. They were political and legal. Legal and political ramifications. Although the palace hoped the October 2025 statement would draw a line under the controversy, the legal landscape shifted almost immediately. The removal of Andrew's titles didn't erase the civil settlement reached with Virginia Giuffre in February 2022, a deal estimated at £12 million. While the agreement prevented a full trial, legal experts began questioning whether British institutions had done enough to investigate. The question grew louder. Was Andrew protected by status, while others faced justice? International pressure mounted. Legal groups in the United States, particularly in New York, where Epstein was first convicted in 2008, began reviewing records tied to Andrew's travel, communications, and finances. Requests for information were reportedly sent to UK authorities by early November 2025. Some wondered if further investigation could be triggered by new testimony or emerging documents. Though Andrew had never been criminally charged, the question of accountability refused to fade. Inside Parliament, the scandal reignited debate over royal immunity. Could a member of the royal family be forced to testify? Should Parliament have the power to remove royal titles through legislation rather than relying on the monarch? A cross-party working group formed in late October, with figures from Labour, SNP, and even a few Tory rebels supporting reform. By 25th October, a draft bill had already been introduced to the House of Commons, proposing new oversight mechanisms for royal finances and legal compliance. The implications ran deep. The monarchy had long existed in a constitutional gray area, symbolic yet powerful, public yet legally insulated. But Andrew's scandal shattered that balance. What had once been sacred, titles, immunity, silence, was now fair game. For the first time in modern British history, Parliament, the courts, and the people were aligned in a singular demand: accountability at every level. But even as laws shifted and reforms took shape, a deeper wound remained. One that laws couldn't immediately fix. Public trust, once the monarchy's greatest weapon, was now its greatest vulnerability. The cultural foundation of royal power had cracked. The trust crisis and cultural consequences. The Andrew scandal didn't just damage the monarchy's structure, it struck at its soul. For decades, the royal family had projected unity, honor, and tradition. But by late 2025, polling from Ipsos Mori showed a sharp decline. Trust in the monarchy had fallen to 42%, the lowest in 25 years. Among people aged 18 to 34, the number was even lower. Just 28% believed the monarchy was still a force for good. The numbers were more than statistics. They were signs of a cultural rupture. In the press, op-eds once filled with royal admiration now questioned the institution's relevance. Writers at The Times, The Guardian, and even the traditionally royal-friendly Daily Mail asked if the monarchy had lost its moral compass. On social media, hashtags like #NotMyPrince and #RoyalAccountabilityNow trended across platforms. Late-night shows, podcasts, and satire targeted the institution with fresh venom. For the first time in a generation, the crown wasn't just being mocked, it was being doubted. Tourism officials quietly reported that royal-related travel bookings were down 12% compared to 2024, with fewer visitors attending palace tours and official exhibitions. Retailers carrying royal-approved merchandise also noted a slump. Meanwhile, TV and streaming deals tied to royal documentaries faced delays or rewrites. Netflix, which had been working on a Prince Andrew-centered drama, paused production indefinitely amid backlash. The scandal had bled into the brand, and the brand was bruised. Worse still, the monarchy's crisis echoed other failing institutions. From the Catholic Church to powerful corporations and governments, the story was familiar: unchecked privilege, hidden abuse, and delayed justice. What made this scandal uniquely damaging was its symbolism. The British monarchy wasn't just a political tool, it was part of the national identity. And when symbols crack, everything built on them begins to shake. So the question loomed: after all the fallout, was there a way back? Or was this the turning point? The moment history would mark as the beginning of the end? The answer wasn't just in the past, sad or present. It would be decided in the choices the monarchy made next. Turning point or decline? After the storm of October and November 2025, the royal household entered crisis mode. Meetings were held at Clarence House, communications tightened, and staff were reshuffled. According to leaks in The Times, King Charles III ordered a private review of the family's public role and costs to the state. While no official reforms were immediately announced, insiders confirmed that the mood was unmistakably urgent. What came next wasn't just image repair, it was survival strategy. One of the first visible changes was the reduction in working royal roles. Several patronages were quietly reassigned or retired. Prince Edward and Sophie, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, began appearing more frequently, as younger royals were held back from public-facing duties. Royal sources hinted that upcoming 2026 state visits would be scaled back, and budget reviews were underway for palace upkeep and security costs. It was clear the monarchy was trimming its profile. Key dates now held new weight. The next state opening of Parliament, the Commonwealth Day service, and the annual Trooping the Colour were seen as tests. Would the public return? Would protests resume? The palace, cautious and watchful, offered no guarantees. Even popular figures like Princess Catherine remained low profile during this period, a strategic silence that spoke volumes. In the vacuum left by Andrew, every appearance carried risk. And so the final question echoed. Was this the end of an era or the start of a new one? The monarchy, wounded and watching, stood at a crossroads. Reform or resist? Shrink or evolve? For the first time in over a century, the royal institution wasn't shaping the narrative, it was reacting to it. And history would remember how it chose to respond. So now it's official. The cover-ups are exposed, the titles are gone, and the crown's carefully guarded image is cracked wide open. The monarchy will never be the same. Public trust is broken. Parliament is circling, and the younger royals are left to clean up a mess that's been years in the making. Is this the beginning of the end, or the rebirth of a modern monarchy? One thing's certain, history is being rewritten right now.